Welcome back to the Mashed Potatoes Outdoor Show. Today I'm sitting here in my kitchen getting ready to make my first batch of beef jerky using my homemade food dehydrator if you happen to watch my previous video. This is Camping Vlog 72. Don't go anywhere. Alright, first let's start out with the ingredients that I used for my marinade. As you can see, there's some pink sea salt, onion powder, garlic powder, black pepper, sugar, habanero peppers, worcestershire sauce, and some water, and some soy sauce. You can find the details of the recipe in the description of this video if you're interested. So you basically just take all these ingredients, pop them into a blender. I actually didn't do anything with the habanero peppers other than pull the stem off. Kept those in there whole. And they just popped them into the blender for a little while. Only took less than 30 seconds. I guess each blender will be different. Then I just took that marinade and I popped it into a cake pan. I think some people do Ziploc bags, but I'm always afraid they're going to leak. So I just threw the marinade in there. And now it's time to cut the meat. And if you're wondering what kind of meat to use, there's some details in the description of my video, but I used what's called beef eye of round roast. Got it at Walmart for almost $6 a pound. So the first thing you need to do with this meat, pop it in the freezer for a few hours so it cuts easier. But then you got to trim the fat off. You can see there's a piece of fat right there that can actually go rancid. So I cleaned the fat off the best I could and threw it off to the side. And so now we've got a pretty lean cut of meat. I learned later that I wished I had kept it in the freezer just a little bit longer. Alright, so I cut mine to about 1/4 of an inch thick. That's about the thinnest I could get it. Next time I'll try to cut it thinner for sure. And obviously these are big slabs of meat. I'll cut those down later in this video. But I let it marinate for a total of 18 hours. Next time I'm going to try and marinate it a bit longer to see what kind of difference it makes. But then I wanted to cut them into strips to hang on the hooks for my homemade dehydrator. So that's what I did. I cut them all in half. You'll see here in a second. Alright, so now we've got 10 pieces, which is all that my dehydrator will hold. The color you see there is from the soy sauce and the Worcestershire sauce. Alright, now it's time to put it on the hooks. I wasn't sure how this was going to work, so I just actually took a little knife and sliced a hole right through the tip of the meat. And it actually worked out great. The hooks went in quite easily. And there we go. I had a little bit of meat left over, as you'll see, which is actually still marinating. I'll probably hang that maybe this weekend. So I had, I think, 2.5 pounds of meat. I'm assuming about half of it was fat, or ½ pound was fat, so they ended up with about 2 pounds of meat. Alright, so we got it hung in the dehydrator here. All 10 pieces. So the method I use here with my food dehydrator is what's considered the sun-dry method. I'm not actually cooking the meat, I'm more so just drying out the meat and preserving the meat. So there's my hygrometer to measure my humidity levels and temperature levels. We'll talk more about that here in a minute. So what I learned is that 2/3 of the weight of your meat will actually evaporate. So I'm thinking I've got about 1.5 pounds hanging right there, which will end up producing about 1/2 pound of jerky. So as you can see, those popsicle sticks are there so that the two mesh bins will sit flush on top of each other. That ended up working out great. So I just got my meat hanging out, and I ended up putting some aluminum foil around that mixed nut container. I wasn't sure how hot that light bulb will get, but we'll talk about that here in a second. So after a ½ hour, the humidity level actually dropped to 15% and the temperature rose up to 85 degrees. So it's a little bit hotter than I thought it would get, but so here you're looking at the meat after 21.5 hours. It actually dried out quicker than I thought, but then To completely dry out is another story. So 21.5 hours, it looked pretty good. So I actually pulled it out after 24 hours, which ended up not being enough because my meat was so thick. If I'd cut it in 1/8 strips, it probably would have been done. But since I had it in 1/4 strips, it wasn't quite done. So what I ended up doing is cutting them in half and setting them on the counter for another 24 hours. You'll see here, I kind of tested out the jerky. So the test for jerky is to bend it in half. And it should almost break in half. You should see these white strands, and you can see it's not really even coming close to breaking in half. And that's because it's just a little bit thicker than it should have been. So I'm gonna take a bite out of here. I'm gonna take a bite here in a second, and you'll see that I was able to break it apart, but it's definitely just not quite dry in the middle. So good thing I got strong teeth. It actually tasted great, but you'll see here when I show you, the middle is just not quite done. So that's why I cut it in half and set it on the counter for another 24 hours, and that ended up working out great. Alright, so that's what I did, cut it in half. So what was interesting to see is that the natural humidity level is 25% in my house and 65 degrees. So my food dehydrator actually dropped it to 15% at 85 degrees, which I thought was quite interesting. I didn't really expect the humidity level to drop like that. So what I want to show you here is what I was trying to produce with my food dehydrator is a nice small, lightweight, compact unit, and there's the whole unit right there. I've got a little different battery powered fan I'm going to use when I'm camping, but that'll be a nice space saver for me. And also, cleaning the hooks was quite easy. I just took some water, popped it into the microwave until it boiled, and then just dropped the hooks in, let them set for about a minute or two, and kill the bacteria, because obviously the meat was raw when I put it on there. And so I was pretty happy with that solution as well. So since this was my first time making beef jerky, I kind of wanted to wrap up this video with a few lessons that I've learned. First of all, I wanted to start off with what I actually loved about the process. So the recipe was really awesome. I definitely want to try new recipes, but I was pretty happy with how things turned out, being that I had no idea what to expect with the habanero peppers and all that stuff. What else I loved, the food dehydrator that I made worked out amazing. I wasn't sure if it would even work at all. So it's very energy efficient, it's small, it's lightweight, it's going to be perfect for my camping trip to Montana. Another thing that I loved was cleaning the hooks was really easy. Put some water in the microwave, get it to a boil, bring it out, set the hooks in there, wipe them off. That worked out great. Wasn't sure if that would work at all. I wasn't even sure if the meat would even hang on those hooks. So let's talk about what I learned. So there are actually different methods for making beef jerky. What I did would be considered the sun-dry method. And the meat doesn't actually cook. Instead, it's kind of being preserved by the salt and the sugar in the recipe. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. Another method for making beef jerky is obviously a food dehydrator. Now a food dehydrator actually gets the meat up to temperature and cooks it. You can do an oven at low temperature, which also cooks the meat obviously, and you can also smoke meat, which I think works in two ways. The smoker actually cooks the meat up to a temperature, and the smoke itself acts as a preservative as well. So let's talk a little bit more about this sun-dry method. Obviously, if I was outside, I probably wouldn't even use the light bulb. I would actually just let it sit in the sun, put the fan on it, and let it do its thing. So let's talk about salt and sugar as a preservative. I learned a little something online. So salt dries food. Salt draws water out of food and dehydrates it. All living things require water and cannot grow in the absence of it, including the bacteria which can cause food poisoning. Salt is used to preserve beef jerky by keeping it dry. Salt kills microbes. High salt is toxic to most microbes. Also, solutions high in sugar also have the same effect on microbes, which is why it is used as a preservative of foods such as jams and jellies. So I thought that was super interesting. I know a lot of these shows that I watch, these Alaskan homesteading shows, they put a ton of salt on the salmon before they throw it in the smoker or whatever. I never really realized that salt and sugar actually kills the microbes that can cause bacteria. So what else I learned is that next time I'm going to freeze the meat a bit longer. Because I didn't freeze it long enough, I was only able to cut it into 1/4-inch strips, and I was really aiming for 1/8-inch strips. So that's why it took longer than 24 hours to dry out. What else I learned? Obviously, as I just mentioned, I'm going to cut it into smaller pieces, probably just a little bit thinner. What I definitely learned is that the habanero oils can really burn your eyes. So if you're handling the habanero peppers, make sure to wash your hands. If you're handling the marinade, make sure to wash your hands. If you're handling the jerky after it's been in the marinade, make sure to wash your hands. I did wipe my eyes and got some habanero oil in there, which I'm sure everybody's going to do it once or twice before they learn their lesson. What else I learned is that next time I actually might use a little bit more salt. A lot of these sun-dried jerky recipes call for just a little bit more salt, or like a curing salt, to do a little bit better job of killing those microbes. Alright, so going forward, things I'm going to try. I would love to try and marinate it a bit longer. I marinated this one for 18 hours. I would like to try and marinate it maybe for double that amount of time, see what kind of difference that makes. Also going forward, in my next video I'm going to be doing a product review of a coffee grinder I just bought. It's a manual burr coffee grinder from the Java Press Coffee Company, and this is going to be awesome. I've never had a coffee grinder, and because it is a manual one, I'll be able to take it on my camping trips. I've been using it the last few mornings, and there are a lot of things I love about it, a few things I would change about it, but that'll be in my next video. Also, on Monday, I might go skiing at Breckenridge, do another skiing video. There's a couple of peaks that I haven't hit yet that are supposed to be a ton of fun. I've only ever skied at Breckenridge in December. So now that it is February, all the terrain is open, and I'm going to be able to check out a lot more of the acres that I've never explored before. Also going forward, some of you know I'll be camping in Bozeman, Montana for the entire month of May. So I'm pretty excited about that, try out my beef jerky recipe. I'm actually hoping to move to Bozeman, so while I'm there, I'm going to be probably looking for a place to live. One more thing is that I have possibly found a dog. I'd like to get a dog when I move to Montana, and I found a German Shepherd. His name is Oso. I'll put a picture on the screen so you can check him out. This lady is kind of tentatively holding him for me. If it was meant to be, then it will be. So I'm pretty excited about that. I've been wanting to get a dog for such a long time. My parents have a golden retriever, which is awesome, but being that I do a lot of hiking and stuff, I think a German Shepherd would be a great fit for me. So that's all I've got for you today. Thanks for watching the Nash Potatoes Outdoor Show. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. We will see you next time.